Have you ever sat in your room late at night, staring up at the ceiling and wondering, what's the point of any of this? Maybe you've worked hard for something, a job, a relationship, a dream, only to feel a crushing emptiness the moment you achieved it. Or perhaps you're caught in the endless grind. Wake up, eat, work, sleep, repeat. Days blur together, and that small voice in your mind keeps whispering, is this all there is? Why bother living if nothing really matters? If you've ever wrestled with these questions, you're not alone. You're not broken. In fact, you're standing at the same crossroads that once haunted one of the 20th century's most provocative thinkers, Albert Camus. He called it the feeling of the absurd, a deep sense that life doesn't add up, that we're thrown into a world without answers, forced to act out a script that makes no sense. Today on MindMirror, we're not just going to explain why life can feel so meaningless. We're going to break open Camus's radical response to this pain and show you how confronting the absurd can become your secret source of freedom, power, and passion. We'll explore what the absurd actually means, why the search for meaning so often fails, and most importantly, what you can do when the world refuses to give you the answers you crave. By the end of this journey, you won't just have new words for your suffering. You'll have a toolkit, a mindset for living with honesty, courage, and even joy, no matter how senseless things may seem. So, let's dive in. Let's ask the forbidden questions, and let's see what happens when you stop running from the absurd and start making it your ally. Let's start by giving your pain a name, the absurd. But what does that actually mean? The absurd isn't just a fancy philosophical term. It's the collision, the head-on crash between your craving for clarity and meaning, and a world that stays stubbornly silent. You, as a human being, long for purpose, explanations, stories that make sense. You want to believe that your suffering matters, that love conquers all, that there's a cosmic plan for your life. But the universe, it doesn't answer back. The stars don't whisper reasons for your heartbreak. The sky doesn't explain why tragedy happens to good people. No matter how hard you search, reality keeps its secrets. Camus writes, "The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world." Imagine shouting your biggest questions into a canyon. Why am I here, and hearing nothing but echoes? That's the absurd. Think about your own life. Have you ever lost someone you love, only to realize that no words or rituals could make sense of the loss? Or maybe you've poured years into a career, then found yourself asking, did any of this really matter? The absurd isn't just an idea, it's an experience, a wound that cuts into your everyday reality. So why does this matter for you? Because naming the absurd is the first step in healing from it. When you recognize that the pain you feel isn't a sign of your personal failure, but a feature of being conscious in a world that refuses to explain itself suddenly, you're not lost, you're awake. Pause. Ask yourself, when was the last time you felt the unreasonable silence of the world? What questions keep coming back, no matter how many answers you chase? Here's the key. The absurd doesn't mean you're doomed. It means you're alive. To notice the gap between what you want and what you get from life is the beginning of all honest philosophy. Point to take away. Next time you feel that emptiness, remind yourself, I'm experiencing the absurd. This isn't just my pain, it's the basic human wound. Let's push deeper. Why does the search for meaning so often end in frustration? Camus saw that humans are meaning-making machines. You build stories about who you are, why you suffer, what the future holds because meaning gives you comfort. It makes the world predictable. But the harder you chase some final, total answer, the one thing that will justify all your pain, the more elusive it becomes. Imagine spending years thinking, if I just get this job, or fall in love, or reach this level of success, then it will all make sense. And yet, even when you reach those milestones, satisfaction fades, the questions return, the hunger grows. Camus warns that if you're not careful, this hunger turns dangerous. When you can't find meaning, you might try to force it. Some people turn to fanaticism, clinging to an ideology or belief system so tightly that they ignore reality. Others numb themselves with distractions, work, substances, scrolling for hours, anything to avoid facing the silence. But here's the hard truth. No story, no belief, no achievement can permanently shield you from the absurd. As long as you're alive, you'll feel that gap again and again. So what does this mean for you? It means you can stop blaming yourself for not having it all figured out. The next time you're haunted by that sense of, what's the point? Recognize it as a sign of your humanity, not your weakness. Reflect, in what ways have you tried to force meaning onto your life? Did it work? Or did the questions just morph and return? Key insight. Freedom begins when you stop running from the absurd and stop expecting life to provide neat final answers. Let's pause here and recap. So far, we've named the absurd and seen why the search for tidy meaning so often fails. But now comes the real question. If life won't provide answers, how should you live? Here's where Camus drops the bombshell and offers a path that is as challenging as it is liberating. Most philosophies, when faced with the meaninglessness of life, suggest two options: escape or despair. Some people escape into beliefs that promise a hidden order, whether in religion, ideology, or dreams of another world. Others fall into hopelessness, convinced that if there's no meaning, there's no point in living. Camus says neither is honest. Instead, he offers a third way, one that begins with accepting the absurd, not denying it. He calls it revolt. But don't picture a political uprising. Revolt, for Camus, is a personal daily act. It means staring the absurd in the face, refusing to look away, and still saying, I will go on. To revolt is to keep asking questions, keep living, keep loving, even when you know the universe is indifferent. It's the courage to continue, not because you hope for reward, but because you choose to play the game. This rebellion is the source of your true freedom. When you stop searching for external justification, you realize you are free to create your own meaning, to choose your actions, to define what matters to you here and now. And what's the fuel for this life passion? Camus insists, if life has no higher meaning, then your task is not to mope in despair, but to live with intensity, with attention, with delight, to squeeze every drop from each moment, not because you must, but because you can. Let's bring this down to earth. Think of a time when you threw yourself into something, fully aware it might not last: a fleeting love, a creative project, a wild adventure. For those moments, did you feel more alive? That's the taste of revolt, freedom, and passion in action. Why does this matter to your life? Because once you stop waiting for permission from the universe, you can begin authoring your own story. The absurd doesn't block meaning, it demands you create it. Practical point. The next time you feel paralyzed by what's the point, try this. Ask yourself, If there's no guarantee of meaning, what would I choose to do anyway? Let that be your act of revolt. Let's gather ourselves. We've covered a lot: the absurd, the futility of chasing final answers, and Camus' call to revolt, freedom, and passion. But how does this play out in the mess of daily life? Let's ground these ideas in real-world scenarios. Imagine you're stuck in a dead-end job. Every morning the alarm goes off, and you drag yourself out of bed wondering why you bother. You're not passionate about your work, but bills must be paid. The why feels hollow. Or maybe you're facing the heartbreak of loss, a breakup, a death, a friendship that faded away. You crave a story to make sense of your suffering, but none comes. The world just spins on. Here's where the absurd becomes real. These moments are invitations not to despair, but to practice revolt. What would revolt look like in these situations? For the job, maybe it means refusing to let your identity be reduced to your title. Maybe you find small acts of creativity: writing, helping a colleague, learning a skill, not because they will transform everything, but because you choose them. For loss, perhaps revolt means allowing yourself to grieve fully, to feel the pain and still say yes to life in tiny ways. Making coffee, reaching out to a friend, watching the sunrise. Each act is an assertion: I'm still here. I get to choose my next move. Concrete metaphor: picture Sisyphus, the mythic figure condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll down again and again for all eternity. Most would call this a curse, a pointless task. But Camus imagines Sisyphus, sweat on his brow, turning back down the hill with a sly smile. Why? Because in embracing his fate, in choosing to give his effort meaning, Sisyphus becomes the master of his days. He is free, precisely because he accepts the absurd. For you, what is your boulder? In what small way could you embrace your struggle, not as a victim, but as a creator of meaning? Takeaway prompt tonight: before you sleep, ask yourself, where am I waiting for life to give me permission? What's one act of revolt, no matter how tiny, I could take tomorrow to author my own story? Pause, breathe. Notice how far you've come. The absurd isn't an enemy to defeat. It's the soil from which authentic freedom grows. Let's address one final trap. In the face of the absurd, it's tempting to cling to hope not as a gentle faith, but as a way of avoiding the present. Camus calls this the act of eluding, tricking yourself into believing that one day things will finally make sense, and only then will you start living. But hope, if it pulls you out of the present, can become a prison. You wait for the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect version of yourself. Life slips by in anticipation. Camus' wisdom instead of hope. Practice presence. Live fully in the here and now. Savor your morning coffee. Feel the sun on your face. Have real conversations. Take risks not because they guarantee results, but because they matter to you in this moment. Why does this matter? Because only by embracing the present without needing it to add up or lead somewhere else can you experience real joy. You're no longer chasing meaning, you're living it. Point for your life. Try letting go of the question, what will this mean in the long run? Ask instead, what meaning can I make right here, right now? Let's zoom out, pull the lens back, and see what these ideas mean for your whole existence. Let's wrap these concepts together with a story. Imagine someone you know, maybe it's you, going through a rough breakup. The old dreams you built with someone else have shattered. You find yourself wandering the city at night, replaying conversations, longing for answers. In this moment, you feel utterly alone. The city lights are cold. You wish for a sign, a cosmic message that will justify your pain. But there is no sign, just silence. This is the absurd in action. But now, imagine you decide, instead of running from the silence, to listen to it. You let yourself feel every ounce of the hurt. You write about it, walk, maybe cry. Then, one evening, you look up and see the moon shining through the clouds. You realize life is still here, inviting you to participate. In that instant, you choose not to give your pain a reason, but to make your own meaning from it. You pick up a book, reach out to a friend, or simply allow yourself to breathe. You revolt against despair by choosing to be present. You are, for a moment, like Sisyphus smiling, not because you solved the riddle of existence, but because you have chosen your response. Prompt for you. What if the next time you're wounded by life's randomness, you refused to demand answers and instead asked, "What can I create from this moment?" How might your story change if you stopped waiting for meaning and started living as its author? So, why does all of this matter? Because the absurd is not some abstract theory locked away in dusty books. It's the shape of modern existence. In a world overflowing with information, options, and noise, it's easier than ever to feel lost, to wonder if any of it is real. But Camus's answer is urgent. When you accept the absurd, you free yourself from the trap of waiting for permission, of chasing ultimate answers. You become capable of living more honestly, more bravely, more vibrantly right now. Big picture, when you stop demanding that life makes sense, you can start making sense of your own life. When you embrace the absurd, you reclaim your power to choose, to act, to love, to create. As Camus wrote in the midst of winter, "I found there was within me an invincible summer." What could your life look like if you stopped fearing the absurd and started dancing with it? Let's bring it all together. A systematic recap of core points. The absurd, the collision between your need for meaning and the world's refusal to supply it. The futility of forced answers. No story, belief, or achievement can fully erase the absurd. Camus' radical path revolt: choose to live honestly in the face of meaninglessness. Freedom and passion. By revolting, you gain true freedom and the power to create meaning through your actions and passions. Presence over hope. Meaning is not a destination, but a practice made in the here and now. B. Key takeaways and MindMirror tools. You don't need to solve the riddle of existence to live fully. Your struggle with meaninglessness is a sign of life, not a personal failure. By practicing revolt, claiming your freedom, and living with passion, you can turn the absurd into your most honest friend. You are not a victim of a senseless world. You are the artist of your own story. See empowering message and inspiration. Right now, as you listen, there's no need to wait for the universe to approve your choices. You can begin this moment to act not because it all makes sense, but because you are alive and free. You have the power to create meaning not once and for all, but again and again, in each absurd, beautiful day. The absurd is not a curse. It's a challenge, a call to courage, honesty, and joy. Will you answer it? Final call to action. If today's journey challenged or inspired you, I want to hear from you. What is one act of revolt, one moment of passion you can claim as your own right now? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Let's create a space for honest reflection. If you found value here, subscribe to MindMirror for more soul-awakening explorations. And get ready for our next video, where we'll dive even deeper into the paradoxes and promises of human existence. Until then, keep living, keep questioning, and remember the answers you seek might just begin with the courage to ask. The ideas explored in this video are for philosophical and psychological exploration and are not intended as professional advice. Viewers are encouraged to engage in their own critical thinking and further research, and to consult with qualified professionals for personal concerns.